Good little technical difficulties. Maybe that's the segment we should make.
That's what we should make?
That's the segment we should do. Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, just
Terry himself.
Yeah.
That would be, I'm sure people would appreciate that. Hello, listeners. My name is Aiden, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the very first episode of a new podcast designed for movie and TV lovers, Fraternal Fanatics.
Yeah, still crazy to hear that name in action for the first time. Hi, everyone. I'm Shane, Aiden's brother, and we are stoked that we can finally kick things off and bring you this podcast. It's been a goal of ours for a while now.
Very true. In a way, I think the seeds for this podcast were planted way back in 2012 when the Avengers released. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. That was definitely a game changer for us. You could say it set things in motion for this podcast and, developed our shared bond over movies and media such as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Over a decade now, too. Wow, it's been a while. We've watched a lot of things since then, huh? Anyways, tell our listeners what they can expect from this podcast, Shane. Give me your best elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Pretty simple. So the two of us are massive movie and TV buffs. We've constantly obsessed over what we watch, and we figured we could start a podcast both as sort of a time capsule for ourselves and a way to share in the fun and get more people involved in the conversation. So here we are, a podcast where we review and analyze and usually overanalyze movies and TV shows. And we'll be covering all kinds of stuff from the story to the characters to symbolism and music and plot holes and all that fun stuff.
Whew, you've got the job, sir. Anyways, expect a deep dive into the content we all love, as Shane described, on both the big and the small screens. We'll provide plenty of insights, laughs, theories, and of course some good banter along the way.
Hopefully, anyway. But yeah, it's all about getting into the juicy details, what worked, what didn't, what were our favorite or the most unforgettable moments of any property. And a big thing, what are the plot holes or unanswered questions that still remain?
Yeah. And our tastes are varied, too.
Yeah, we want to give everyone a chance to get in on the discussion. While we explore the finer details, we intend on sharing our honest thoughts and opinions with each other and with you, the listeners. So if you love deep dives into the stuff you watch, then this is certainly the podcast for you.
That's right. Hit the nail on the head. We want this podcast to be as interactive as possible. We're not just talking at you. We want you to be part of the conversation as well. That means we'll be asking for your own thoughts and theories on our discussion and for suggestions on what we should cover next.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a way to reach us, you can hit us up on Twitter or X at Fratnatics, Fratnatics. And you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Fraternal Fanatics, all one word. So, let us know what you think, what you agree with, what you don't. And if there's any burning questions or theories you want us to tackle, we're here to take a look.
So now that you've got the gist of what to expect, for today's inaugural episode, we're going to keep it light and fun to start. We'll share a little bit about our favorite movies and TV shows, the ones that turned us into the obsessive viewers we are today, and we'll talk about what makes them so great and give you a taste of the kind of deep dives you can expect from us moving forward.
And of course, we'll tease what's coming up for our next episode, and trust us, you won't want to miss that.
Ooh, baby. All right, let's get into it, Shane. Why don't you kick us off? What's one movie or TV show that made you say, yeah, this is it, I'm hooked forever?
The Incredibles. Awesome movie.
Okay,
first of all.
okay.
Great movie, aside from, it being for children. I mean, that's all relative, right? It's
a family audience.
Exactly. So they have to appeal
something
to
for
parents
everyone.
and stuff too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Those innuendos.
yeah, that movie. In terms of movies that hooked me forever, That's the perfect. Like I watch that movie every single day.
For like at least a year.
No, I don't think it was a year.
I'm pretty sure.
It was certainly months. Like no doubt.
Yeah,
it was
an
months.
extended period of time, literally every day.
As soon as I got home from school, it was the only thing I wanted to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
quite frankly, I could
Incredibles.
watch that movie. Probably not every day, but I could watch that movie a couple times a year and probably not get sick of it.
Well, who was your favorite character of that?
At the time, like, actually, I was gonna say at the time it was probably different, but at the time it was probably Jack, and now it's probably still Jack. Kid's
Good
sick.
answer.
He
Good
just
answer.
does nothing the whole movie and saves the day in both of them too.
At the end, he saves the day?
Yeah, it was when Syndrome was like trying to kidnap him and flying him into the air. And Jack's like, nah, G, I'm going back to my mom. And like turns into the demon.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sends him for a loop. Well, why was he trying to kidnap Jack in the first place, just to mess with?
Yeah, I think it was just last ditch because he had already
Right.
like tried to. Well, he'd already kidnapped Mr. Fantastic or whatever, or maybe not kidnapped, but captured. On
sure,
that
had him
island.
hostage.
Yeah, and then the others come to save him, and then I think
That's
on their
right,
way
yeah,
back, yeah, on their way back, he like has snuck into their house and probably killed the babysitter.
Yeah.
I don't remember what happens to her. Maybe just she gets scared and goes home. And then yeah, he's like waiting for them with Jack at the end.
I'll trust your details of it, because after watching it as many times as you have, you definitely know it better than I do. So
Can't forget.
it's imprinted on your brain.
Yeah, honestly, it
Yeah,
is.
foundational film for sure. Yeah, I had one of those, I guess, like in terms of animated. Well, I guess like why do you think it like had that kind of impact on you, or why did you keep coming back to it? Before I get into what I would say for mine, and that had the same kind of effect.
That was probably like my first superhero movie. Like that was probably my first step into the world of like, because this was before the Marvel movies and stuff were coming.
Of course,
out. This was like that movie would have been early 2000s anyway, like 2002, 2004.
Yeah.
So when I saw it, like that would have been my first exposure to it, and that was probably like the big thing. It's like, oh man, look at what these characters can do. Like that's awesome. Kid can run really fast. That's sick. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. And like, it's a well thought out movie. Like it's a very, it's a story about family and like coming together to help each other out. And it's like you can, despite what age you are, you can certainly,
connect with the themes that are present in there. Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably what it was, and like the action. And actually, you know what really sticks in my head is when Miss Fantastic, there you go.
Yeah, got you with it.
Yeah. When Mr. Incredible is, like, when he's getting captured by Syndrome and he's shooting out of the turrets in the walls, he's shooting the big black orbs at him, and they're all, like, sticking together into that gel. Do you know what I'm talking about? And he's, like, getting stuck there while he's trying to run out of the... Anyway,
yeah, okay.
That scene, for some reason, like, I can picture that right now. It just sticks in my head, and maybe there's something, like, super cool or creepy about whatever those orbs were, but I don't know. Anyways, yeah.
For whatever reason, it's in there for good. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, I'm sure, like, many of us have kind of that film that we look back on early on as a kid that we definitely got a lot of enjoyment and pleasure out of. For me, it was The Iron Giant. To be honest, though, it's been so long since I've watched it, I couldn't really tell you that much about why I loved it so much. I just remember it being like one of those ones that I just kept going back to, and I think I might have to after all this time, because I don't remember a whole lot about it. I just remember it was a special one for sure.
Well, we definitely do have to go, because I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I think we were talking about that, but yeah, like I don't know if it slipped under my radar necessarily, or if it's just that like I would have relied on somebody else to show me. Like the same as a lot of the other stuff.
It came out before you that. Right. It came out before you were born too. I think it must have been 90s. Late 90s, yeah. Or maybe like very early 2000s. I'd have to double check.
it's worth checking out anyway, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
So that was one that hooked you when you were a kid, but did you have another one that really hooked you forever?
Yeah, like when I thought a bit more on it, whenever we were talking about like, favorite movies and it being so difficult to narrow it down to one thing, there were definitely, some things that came to mind, but one that just I couldn't get off my head, and it would be in any, like, if I really broke things down, it would be in any, like, top 10, top 5, top 3 list. So I just figured I'd have to give it the prime spot at number 1. The Dark Knight, it's just prolific in terms of, like, what it did for superhero movies in general. Like, before that, especially with Batman-related stuff, like, you think back to the Tim Burton stuff that was, Michael Keaton's version, and the Joker, Jack Nicholson as the Joker, which was much like zanier, kind of wackier take on Joker. And then you think ahead to, like, Jim Carrey as the Riddler and his kind of antics and stuff too. And it was a much less grounded take, I guess. So when it came to Chris Nolan's, The Dark Knight specifically, but the trilogy in its own, like, it was just set the tone so far above what those past films were. Like, granted, in their own right, like, there's a place for those kind of wacky, zanier takes. Definitely feel more like the comic books, probably, in a way. But I just so much more appreciated the grounded, more militaristic, like, take on Batman and the darker, world of Gotham and all that.
Yeah, the stakes are very real in those. Like, you feel the pressure of the situation that Christian Bale's Batman is under, where I feel like you didn't really get that. It's much more of like in the other ones, it's much more of like a contrived city. Like, it feels like a place that's made up.
In the old ones?
In the older ones, yeah. Like, it feels like this is just what happens in this city. Like, there's just criminals running amok, and, like, there's just all going on.
Yeah, that's just what Gotham is. Like, kind of, it never goes away.
Yeah.
It's just always like this good versus evil, Batman versus the criminal underbelly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Dark Knight trilogy, it's like especially each movie has their own, like, distinct terrorist group. And maybe terrorist group is the wrong way to put it, but, like, they're distinct, because antagonist doesn't sell it enough like it is. Like, in each one, it's not just, Raish, Liam Neeson, it's the League of Assassins and, like, the whole shebang. In the Dark Knight, it's the Joker and all of his followers and, like, mercenaries and stuff that is.
Well, and even just, like, different factions in the Dark Knight too.
Especially
right? It's like
Rises,
the mafia, Italian mafia, and then there's, like, the Chinese triad, and there's several different units, I guess, there, right, that are all kind of, like, vying for power in the city, but the Joker ultimately, kind of dwarfs them all. Yeah.
That was a much better, well, maybe better isn't fair, but that was maybe a more engaging representation of, like, superhero movies than the X-Men ones were. Like, setting aside the old Batman stuff that was covered, but, like, X-Men 1 and 2, and what was the third one called?
The Last Stand, I think
that's right. And I think
you're talking, like, with
before.
Hugh like the first ones with like Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry. And,
exactly, though, like, the Dark Knight trilogy was a better representation of, like, superheroes in real life.
Yeah, I think even like it kind of, the X-Men was definitely more of, like, this is, like, a superhero movie and these are, like, comic book characters. With Nolan's trilogy, it's much more of, like, this, it's a much more human story, right? It's, like, less, and that's always who Batman was too. He's always, like, in my eyes, been kind of distance from like these, you know, supernatural kind of superheroes and ones with like mystic powers and all that. Like Batman's just a rich guy with, you know, too much money and nothing else to do but punch some skulls in. But no, it's much more, not that the like I love like, you know, those other types of superheroes too, but it's refreshing to have like a much more realistic version of things where we get to see like, you know, what happens, you know, when this guy loses his parents and because of the city and the state that it's in, and it continues that way for, you know, his young life, and he decides to do something and stand up. And you know, it is an age old story, but it was just retold so well by Nolan because, you know, of the directional style he took. And then obviously, you know, you need good acting chops in there too. So Bale was an obvious choice, and he you know, took the role and ran with it. So we got what we got because of that. And I think it's like pinnacle superhero storytelling.
Yeah, which is kind of sad.
What do you mean?
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I guess there hasn't been
where
anything that has overtaken it since then.
Actually, I guess that tracks. We had like a good falling action of Marvel flicks coming out, and then they just.
I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, yeah, thinking of it, there's some things that like, you know, Daredevil was a nice, like, in a similar vein, like grounded, more realistic. Like, I know like some of his powers, like the echolocation and like the heightened senses and stuff, but it's like
there's nothing broken.
No, and it's much less like pronounced, I guess. I don't know, in at least the Netflix version of things.
Yeah, he can walk about subtly, like with using all of his skills and powers without anybody knowing, versus someone like Doctor Strange. If he was fucking flying around with the cloak there all the time, it's like people take notice of him. Like,
yeah,
it's pretty clear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it helps to be a blind guy to blend in a bit.
Yeah, true. Nobody gives you a second look.
Or do they?
Unless you're catching bricks like a madman.
Yeah, that was nuts.
But he is just a really good lawyer, I guess.
But yeah, like that's what I would say. Definitely for, you know, favorite movie, I'd have to give it to The Dark Knight.
Yeah, certainly the best portrayal of Batman, best portrayal of the Joker, aside from like the animated series. And I guess I should specify live action.
Yeah, I loved Heath Ledger's version, but I thought it would be interesting too. Obviously, like we're such big fans of Batman related media and stuff too, and the games in particular, the Batman Arkham series. And Mark Hamill's portrayal of Joker is awesome too, like so menacing, but in such a like zany kind of way too. So it almost reminds me of like, you know, a mix of Mark Hamill's performance and Heath Ledger's performance would have been sort of an interesting take as a live action version, but obviously Mark Hamill isn't in any state to play a live action version of Joker, I don't think.
I don't know. How, like, well, I guess you do have to be pretty physical in that role.
I just think he's aged out at this point.
But with all the makeup and stuff on, and dye his hair green, like, that becomes a non-issue. His face is painted white.
Yeah, maybe.
That would be an interesting... I could see that happening, but it would have to be a much more, like... I don't think I'd like that version of Joker, because I think it'd have to be much more of, like, a mob boss kind of... Like, I guess more akin to, like, Arkham Origins and Troy Baker's take on it. I mean, I shouldn't necessarily just call it Troy, like, it's the writers as well. It just, he happened to voice them, or happened to voice Joker in that. And I think that would be more the route you'd have to go down with an older Joker. It would have to be like a much more established criminal enterprise, and like he's, you know, not like in The Dark Knight, he was organizing and a part of all the nitty gritty details of his plans, right? Like he was at the bank heist at the beginning. He was at, he had the trigger for the boats at the end there to blow them both up. Like I think you wouldn't.
He played a piece and all of that.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think a Mark Hamill live action Joker would be able to be as like hands on in those circumstances.
Like he's sort of delegating from above.
Yeah. Which
much more like in the games, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Sort of has a lot of henchmen do his dirty work for him, and while he's pulling the strings in the background, working on kind of the broader scope of things.
Yeah. Which I guess maybe that's more a consequence of like game development, and like you can't just be fighting Joker all the time, which I'm not mad about at all. Like those games,
it has to lead up to like
a
fight with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that works in the games from both like a progression and a story standpoint.
I mean, regardless, like Joker's probably been done to death at this point, obviously, with the most recent like Joaquin Phoenix interpretation, which is great too. Like it's a definitely, just in terms of it being a much different take than what we've seen before. More of like, definitely more grounded and realistic in terms of a guy that's struggling mentally and delving into, psychological trauma and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's, much more realistic. I guess Mark Hamill's take would even be, somewhere in between that. But anyways, that's for future reference, I guess, because I don't think the character is ever going to be dead. There's always going to be room to revive him in some way, shape, or form. So, but yeah, what about TV? You had The Incredibles for movie, and then we had The Dark Knight on my side. What about TV? What's like, what sticks out in your head as something that maybe like, I don't know, it's hard to judge. Like, do you judge it by like rewatchability, or do you judge it by like just like quality in and of itself, or like, you do it as you see fit?
Yeah. It certainly isn't my favorite show of all time. Like, by no means would I say this is the best show I've ever watched. But definitely one that hooked me, like that reeled me in big time. And probably the first show that I sat down like week to week to watch, like while it was airing on TV. I was like, Wednesday nights, got to set aside that hour to watch this show. And the show is Arrow. So, like I said, like I've prefaced, not the greatest show ever made. But the first couple seasons were solid.
That's a CW special.
Yes, sir.
No, yeah, I remember. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched some of it, so I'm familiar. So I'll let you continue.
Well, yeah, it was just one of the things that really hooked me about it, the villain of the week.
The baddie of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Gotham was famous for that, I thought, in at least one season. Was it the first season or second season, maybe?
That's
maybe
exactly
both,
it.
I don't know.
And that's exactly the parallel I had drew between them two, is it was both the first season that they started doing this villain of the week thing, and then by the beginning of the second season, well, maybe not the beginning, the first couple episodes are probably the same kind of deal for both of those shows, but very quickly it turns into like, this is the villain we're committing to for this season,
right?
And then generally it was wrapped up by the end of that season, which I think that's the more appropriate way.
Yeah, I kind of like weaving arc throughout a season as opposed to like episode one and done type of thing.
But I do think that's a really good way to open up a show. I think the villain of the week, and especially with comic book characters, and Gotham's a perfect example of that. And like we said, like Batman's rogues gallery is so deep that being able to introduce, if it's 13, 20 episodes per season, being able to introduce 13 to 20 individual characters just to build out the world and have that lore established is a stellar way to start off a show. And like a great way to set yourself up with options for a season 2.
True, because they never die. They're always sent to prison or Arkham Asylum and then re-released or whatever. So It's perfect for introducing the character and then returning to them later on.
Yeah, And that's especially when a character doesn't die. Like, there's 100 ways you can bring them back that I don't have a problem with. Like breaking out of prison by the most ridiculous means. I would probably be okay with that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like Michael Scofield Prison Break level of escape.
Exactly.
It can be, or Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, you just tell me they broke out. I'm like, yeah, that works. That's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Gotham is probably pretty notorious for it. I'm sure its prisons aren't very secure given the rate at which people escape from there.
I don't think anything's too secure in Gotham. Yeah.
There's a lot of recidivism in Gotham. It's a bit of a cesspool. Nothing ever changes there.
No, it certainly doesn't.
It's funny, eh? Despite, like, if we think back, if Batman has been fighting crime in Gotham since, Adam West's days,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
how has he not stamped out the Falcone family? How has he not stamped out Harvey
They're
Dent? Come
sticking
on.
around.
Like,
He somehow survived 4 generations of those families, hundreds of years old, still cooking. No problems. Hips may be sore a little bit from time to time, but nah, he's all good.
well, and he's got quite the entourage these days, too.
It's
Like,
true, yeah.
you'd
the Bat
think,
family is pretty deep.
yeah, many hands make light work, but I don't know, man. Like, they just keep coming back, so... Like, Victor Zsasz can only find so many victims. How are there even, like, civilians left in Gotham to die by the hands of all these villains? It's crazy.
Well, yeah, anyway, we got back to Batman there, no surprise.
Yeah, sorry, it's always going to be there. So, but yeah, continue on with Arrow, because there's obviously a lot of parallels there too. It makes sense that we'd turn to Batman, right? Like,
That's
it's
the
sort
other
of
thing. Yeah, like that story. It's all, it's just a guy with a lot of skill in a particular area, right? Like,
Yeah.
for Green Arrow, it happens to be with a bow. For Batman, it happens to be with everything.
with his fists.
Yeah, like with a fucking stapler, if it is.
Yeah.
But
It's like
yeah,
Jason Bourne style.
yeah, but yeah, it's very much. It's like this, hermetic guy returning to, especially with like the Dark Knight Rises, or with Batman Begins and the Dark Knight Rises. Like, it's this guy returning to the fold to, make a difference, I guess, is ultimately the goal in separate cities that are very similar. And they do, that's the other thing, like the cities do, I can't remember, it's Starling City, and then it becomes Star City later on in the show. Like, that feels very similar to Gotham. Like, there's a very established, distinct, like, financial district and, like, upper class areas and very distinctly lower class and in the weeds. And, it's the same, dealing with the same consequences of that. Like, drugs. One of the best episodes of Arrow that I remember is the one where he's dealing with that, I can't remember what it's called. It's like this green pill anyway, and it's this new drug on the street that's like, it's just giving people like schizophrenia. Like, it's an absolute stain on.
Okay, yeah.
And that's, he's tracking down this dealer or whatever that ends up being the head guy, because he sold it to Oliver Queen's sister. So anyways, he's just like tracking that down. He's like dealing with
Thea?
Yeah, exactly right.
See,
There
I
you
do
go.
remember some stuff about it.
Nicely done. But yeah, it's just like that episode in particular is just a very good, like, well, it's just a good story.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like, it is meaningful, and you can see the impact that this thing could make, like this new drug could make, and you can see the impact that it makes by, it being rendered unavailable, like by him taking down the guy creating it.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of, that show wasn't necessarily the best, but there is a lot of individual episodes that like hit home and that are
I can't remember the point at which I fell off, but I definitely, got at least a couple of seasons under my belt. and I remember enjoying what I watched. But yeah, I just remember there being, a point in time came during the show's life cycle when something happened in terms of writing quality, and
Yeah.
I think things took a dip, and that's probably where I abandoned ship. But no, for what it was, like I thought they had a good recipe cooking for a while there. But yeah, it definitely like sometimes I feel like those shows fall into the trap of feeling a little too like teen drama sort of.
Yeah, that's what happened. 100%. That's what I mean, and I think that's a consequence of them trying to like, you know, loop in all the other shows that they were creating around the same time that
Yeah.
had a much lesser gritty feel to them. Like they
Yeah.
were much more comic book. I shouldn't say comic book because there's some pretty dark comics, but much
But
more
it's not like
happy-go-lucky.
The Punisher. It's not like people
Yeah.
getting their eyes gouged out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
that's what Arrow could have been if it wasn't. Well, if it wasn't airing on CW,
Sure.
big one.
Yeah.
If it was airing on HBO, it would have been outstanding. Although anything that airs on HBO is probably outstanding.
Yeah, there's been some gems on HBO. I mean, we're both fans of Game of Thrones, and obviously both excited for the second season of The Last of Us. Both game players of that. That's just an incredible story too. I think that like TV shows, like I like. I don't know if you had more to share about
No,
Arrow, but
you're good.
I don't think I'd put it in my it didn't come to mind, at least I guess, as my favorites, but probably because of recency of it too. But I thought the Last of Us TV show that was adapted for HBO from the first game was amazing too. Like really hit the strong notes of the game, if not like basically didn't leave many details out from what the game was, and that was truly like a masterpiece. I remember.
Yeah.
I mean, both
that's
of us playing that and just being shell shocked afterwards about how great that was. So
I mean, that's just the most interactive way to experience a story. Like, as much as movies pull you in, like, actually being there, being a part of it is. Which the show did a really good job of capturing that feeling. Like, that stressed. You don't know it's going to work out. Like, in the game, you don't know that you're going to survive this encounter. You don't know that you're going to move on to the next. Like, it might take you a couple tries.
yeah,
And in the movie, I feel like, despite the timer ticking down on the episode or only having a couple episodes left in the season, like, you're still on the edge of your seat. Like, you're still in the
yeah. Well, what do you think you attribute that to? Because I know you weren't like. Was it because of like the apocalyptic nature of the show? Because I know, like, just referencing sort of your thoughts on The Walking Dead too. Like, is there you weren't a huge fan of that, or at least at a certain point?
Mm-hmm.
I know you liked some of it, but the two shows are similar in a way, at least in nature, given that they're both kind of zombie apocalypse esque. So I'm just wondering, like, is it that sense of it that gave you, that feeling from The Last of Us? And if so, why didn't The Walking Dead provide that same kind of lasting impact, I guess, given the similar nature of it?
Yeah. I mean, The Walking Dead certainly. I think actually a really big part of it is just episodes. Like The Walking Dead had, because The Walking Dead really, I didn't fall off until it's probably like the end of season 4.
Another show, obviously, that's got to reign supreme on both of our lists is Breaking Bad.
Yeah, absolute masterpiece. There's there's little more to say than that, but we have a lot more to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where you begin with that. Like, it's just like, I mean, obviously, it's always funny for me to think of Bryan Cranston in that type of role, right? Like, just because we had been so accustomed to seeing Bryan Cranston as Hal on Malcolm in the Middle.
Well, we grew up watching like that. We had the first season on DVD.
Yeah.
And we had watched that first season. I can't
Like
count
hundreds
how many
of times.
Probably more times than I watched The Incredibles.
Probably because like road trips and stuff, right?
Yeah.
It would have been in the rotation for sure.
At grandma's too, like when everybody was together, throw on some Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. Hal, Lois shaving Hal's back and
Yeah.
the kitchen there, I'll never get that out of my head. That's burned into my memory.
Oh, yeah, they're going to the water park. Eh?
Exactly.
He's got to
like, get a little extra slide out of it.
Yeah. Doesn't want to get stuck on the slides, those like shoot ones where you descend and then do a loop-de-loop or whatever. Have you seen, like, I saw a clip the other day where a guy there wasn't enough, strong enough water flow or something, because he definitely wasn't, sometimes it's like you're too light or there's not enough weight there to get you around, but this guy in the clip was not
like
too light.
Man.
Yeah, like there's no, like he was, an average build for the slide. Like he should have been down no problem. But anyways, he ended up getting stuck, I think, because of like the force of the water flow. And just like the terror in his eyes. And that would be me too, right? Because just the claustrophobia of that.
Of course.
But he's kind of like, stumbling around, or not stumbling, but crawling around, I guess, in the tube, like trying to find, because they have those hatches kind of along the slides and stuff. So he's trying to find one of those, and finally a worker at the park or wherever this is opens up a hatch and is like calling him down that way, and eventually he finds his way and gets out. But oh man, that sounds like my worst nightmare, getting stuck in a water slide. Jeez.
Yeah, well, what if they didn't know you were stuck, too? Send the next guy down after you.
Ooh, that'd be a nasty collision.
But yeah, anyway, I don't think Walter White's doing much water sliding these days anyway. Back's too hairy.
No, yeah. I don't think Walter White... Well, I guess
he's... Spoiler alert. Guess he's dead now anyway.
Yeah, like unless you're sending his casket down in a water slide, but I don't think that's happening.
No.
But yeah, Breaking Bad, like, I mean, clearly, a lot of shows, they just kind of try and milk as many seasons as they can. Yeah, they do so many seasons because it's popular, and it just, like, the quality takes a dip at a certain point, like we talked about with The Walking Dead too, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a shame for shows to kind of fall into that trap. So with Breaking Bad, it was nice because it's like, Vince Gilligan has said on the record that it was only ever meant to be, he planned it to be 5 seasons, and he had this, start point and end point in mind, and knew how he was going to tell the story, and, how to get from point A to point B, and it comes through so much better that way because it feels like a complete story at that point, not just a continuation on a continuation on a, like a never-ending sort of when are they going to tie things up.
Yeah, you can tell it's like the show ended when it was intended to. Like, it was as long as it was supposed to be. It wasn't at the mercy of,
right,
networks. And, well, funny enough, I bet you it was at the mercy of networks to write in a 6th season and, like, keep this going. But, yeah, the conviction.
Probably, but how do you even pick up after the end of season 5?
You'd have to rewrite it before that. Like, season 5 wouldn't have been how it was unless they just did El Camino as a full season, which probably would not have been a good idea. Like, that movie was a slow burn as a movie.
I think we have very differing thoughts on El Camino, right? Like,
it's true. But imagine if would you have actually watched a full season of El Camino? No,
I think El Camino was great as a movie.
Yeah.
I think El Camino was what we needed to see, to have I don't even know how to phrase it, like the closure we need. Yeah, closure, exactly. Closure we needed for Jesse's story. I just felt like there was something missing at the end of, like, if that's one thing that I could find in a sea of perfectness that is Breaking Bad, if there's one thing, it's just like, a little bit more to Jesse's story. Because I think the last scene we ever see of Jesse in the show is him driving away from the Nazi compound there in the desert, right? After
right.
Walt saves him, screaming and like
That's the last scene of the show,
joy
too,
and
isn't it?
terror and every emotion you can think of. I don't think it's the last scene in the show. No.
Walt bleeds out.
Yeah, like
That's
I remember,
after.
like My Baby Blue, like them singing the song
That's right,
as
yeah.
Walt is
I
like
thought
laying
that
in the
was-
lab after kind of recollecting and fondly remembering his times cooking up a batch of crystal.
Batch Blue Sky.
Oh yeah,
The good stuff.
we'll have to do a little bit more of a deep dive on an episode dedicated to Breaking Bad. Because that's obviously going to come. It's, like we've said, it's a masterpiece. And
Yeah, it's only a matter of time until we rewatch that anyway.
Yeah,
For
and
our own enjoyment.
exactly. But it's also one of those shows that it's like, it's just not going to, you wish you could unsee what you've seen and see it for the first time again.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it has those twists and turns that are just so impactful the first time you watch it that are great again whenever you've rewatched it. But it's just, something different about seeing that for the first time.
Well, yeah, we talked about a lot of our favorites this episode. Covered The Incredibles, The Iron Giant that we'll be getting to, Breaking Bad, all potential for future episodes.
The potential is limitless.
Potential is the wrong word, I suppose. Potential suggests it might not happen when it definitely will.
Well, I mean, the potential, like, the boundaries are endless is what I mean to
I
say
see what
by
you're saying.
potential.
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
We're
We could
gonna
go
cover
anywhere.
everything here.
Yeah.
So this is just a taste.
Yeah, we got the whole span of Hollywood to cover, not to mention everything on TV and streaming, and
It's a long list.
a lot to pick from.
Yeah. All right. So here's the deal for our next episode. Shane, what are we going to dive into?
Next episode, we're taking a look at the boy who lived himself. Looking at the Harry Potter series.
HP.
Baby. Oh, yeah.
Okay, that one really, has a lot of foundational elements in my love of Hollywood. I'm not going to lie. That one goes way back for me.
Yeah. Well, way back and beyond Hollywood, too. I mean, you
Beyond
poured over
Hollywood.
the books.
Several times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably several times a year.
Back to back to back to back times a couple. 7 books, right?
7 books. That's right.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting, difference here. I've only read the first 3 books, and those were many years ago. Probably got too intimidated by Goblet of Fire being, 18,000 pages?
Significantly
About
larger than
cover
the
it.
rest. Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a jump in terms of volume.
Yeah. But anyways, very big fan of the movies despite that. I am coming refreshed. I've watched them all very recently. Had a
That's what I like to hear.
mini marathon, I guess. I watched them separately, but all in quick succession anyway. But yeah, you're coming in with the more book perspective, so there will be some interesting differences to take up. I definitely have questions for all you book lovers. You might have some better theories than I've been able to craft in my own head. In fact, I'm sure you will have better theories than those.
Well, I'm excited that's actually what I'm most excited for, is to see, from your perspective of just the movies and, having a little bit of limited book knowledge, I guess, in terms of the first 3, to see how your theory crafting sort of matches what answers I can give you from the books, from what I remember, obviously. And I've been doing a little digging and research myself to prepare myself for some of the questions you might have. but I'm sure I won't have a tough time with that because I'm a seasoned vet when it comes to Harry Potter and any trivia related to Harry Potter, so I should be good, but I'm willing for you to test me a little bit here.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll be coming with some tough ones then for sure.
All right, so yeah, Harry Potter, that's what you can look forward to, listeners.
Yes,
We're going to
sir.
analyze it, share our theories, going to get into it, dive deep.
Yeah, no kidding. So if you're looking for a place to keep up with us until that episode drops, you can look us up at Fratnatics, Fratnatics, on Twitter, or Fraternal Fanatics on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, I guess anywhere else, eh?
Yep, subscribe to us on all things so you never miss an episode. And if you liked what you heard, leave us a rating or review. It helps us out a lot.
Big time. And as always, if you have any thoughts on what you might like us to cover next, definitely let us know. We're all ears.
Absolutely. See you next time, listeners.
Thanks, everyone.